The late afternoon light poured through the high windows of the Alden mansion, bathing the marble floors in a golden hue. The vast house was unusually quiet, save for the faint rustle of leaves outside and the ticking of an antique clock that echoed through the hall. Mr. Richard Alden, a man of precision and power, walked briskly through the entrance, his leather shoes clicking sharply against the polished floor. He wasn't supposed to be home this early. A meeting had been cancelled, and for once, he thought he might surprise his young son, Ethan. But as he set his briefcase down and loosened his tie, a strange sound caught his ear, voices. Faint, rhythmic, and oddly musical. He frowned. The tutors weren't scheduled today. His wife was visiting her sister in the countryside. The servants never went upstairs when Ethan was studying. So who was talking? He followed the sound up the grand staircase, his brow furrowing deeper with each step. The voices grew clearer, carrying a tone that didn't sound like any language he recognized immediately. The words were soft and flowing, yet distinct, something foreign, elegant, and deliberate. Then came laughter, his son's unmistakable giggle. The kind of pure laughter he hadn't heard in months. Mr. Alden slowed his pace near the study door, his curiosity overpowering his usual restraint. The door was slightly ajar. He leaned closer and peeked inside. What he saw made him pause, frozen in disbelief. There, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, was Maria, their maid. She was in her plain gray uniform, her dark hair neatly tied back, her face calm and focused. Beside her sat Ethan, his little face lit with excitement, his small hands clutching a colorful workbook. Spread around them were several open books, each with different scripts and symbols, some in delicate Chinese characters, others in looping Arabic script, and a few filled with French and Spanish words written neatly in pen. Ethan's voice piped up eagerly. Bonjour, Maria, ka va. Maria laughed softly, her eyes warm. Très bien, Ethan. Now say it again, but with confidence. He straightened his back and repeated the phrase louder, earning a proud nod from her. Then she switched languages effortlessly. Now, in Spanish, say, hola, papa. ¿Cómo estás? The boy hesitated for a second, then tried it. His pronunciation wasn't perfect, but it was surprisingly good for a child of 7. Richard's heart pounded in his chest. Ethan had been struggling in school, especially with focus and speech. Tutors came and went, all paid handsomely, yet none managed to inspire this kind of enthusiasm. And here he was, his son smiling, engaged, learning 5 languages from a maid. He stayed silent, hidden just behind the door, watching as Maria guided Ethan through one exercise after another. Her voice was gentle, patient, filled with a tone that carried both kindness and quiet authority. She corrected him softly, never scolding, never rushed. When he stumbled on a Mandarin phrase, she laughed lightly and said, "Don't worry, Ethan. Even I used to get confused. Remember, it's all about rhythm. Listen, ni hao." Ethan mimicked her, his little tongue tripping over the tones but improving each time. His laughter filled the room again. "It sounds funny when I say it." Maria smiled. "That's how learning works. You start with laughter, and end with pride." For a man like Richard Alden, who had built his fortune through discipline and order, this scene was foreign, yet strangely moving. He leaned closer, not wanting to interrupt. His son's eyes shone with joy, something money had failed to buy him. After a few more rounds of practice, Ethan looked up at Maria with genuine admiration. "Maria, how do you know so many languages? You talk like my tutor, but better." Maria smiled faintly, lowering her gaze. "My mother was a teacher," she said softly. "She taught me when I was young. She said learning languages helps you see the world through many eyes." Ethan tilted his head, thinking hard. Even if you're just a maid? The question hung in the air for a moment. Richard felt a pang in his chest, an instinct to correct his son, but before he could step in, Maria responded gently. "Yes, even if you're a maid. Knowledge doesn't belong to rich or poor people. It belongs to anyone who wants it." Ethan nodded slowly, as if understanding something far beyond his years. "Then I want to know everything too." Maria chuckled softly. "Then we'll learn together. Next week, maybe we'll try a new language, Arabic. It's beautiful, like music." The boy's eyes widened with excitement. "Can we, please?" She nodded. "Of course, Ethan. But first, Let's finish this one. They continued for another half hour, lost in their own little world. Richard stayed frozen in the doorway, unable to move. Every word, every smile between them, chipped away at his assumptions about the people who worked for him. He had hired Maria a year ago, barely paying attention to her background. All he knew was that she was quiet, efficient, and never asked for more than what was given. He had never once considered what she might be capable of beyond chores and cleaning. Now he was seeing a completely different person, educated, compassionate, patient, and his son adored her. When Ethan finally recited a full sentence in Arabic, Maria clapped softly. Perfect, Ethan, you did it. The boy's face beamed. Did I really? I sounded like you. Maria laughed, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. You sounded better than me. In that moment, Richard felt something stir deep within him, an emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. Pride, not just for his son, but for the unexpected beauty of human connection that had formed in his home, without his control or influence. He quietly stepped back from the door, careful not to be seen. He wanted to preserve that moment, let it continue naturally. As he walked down the stairs, the voices behind him faded into a soft symphony of laughter and learning. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel empty or cold. It felt alive, with warmth, curiosity, and a kind of love that no wealth could ever buy. And Richard Alden, the man who thought he had everything, realized he might have been missing the most important lesson of all. The evening settled softly over the Alden mansion, painting the sky in shades of crimson and violet. The grand chandelier in the study glowed warmly, casting golden circles of light over the polished oak desk. Richard Alden sat behind it, deep in thought, his fingers tapping absently on a fountain pen. The memory of what he had witnessed earlier, the laughter, the lessons, the quiet brilliance of his maid, played over in his mind like a film he couldn't stop watching. He wasn't used to being surprised, much less moved. In his world, people were defined by titles, credentials, and bank accounts. Yet Maria, a woman he had barely noticed beyond her uniform, had managed to awaken something in his son that no professional tutor could. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he said, his voice calm but firm. The door opened slowly, and Maria stepped inside, her hands clasped nervously in front of her apron. Her gaze remained low, her posture respectful. You wanted to see me, sir? She asked quietly. He studied her for a moment before nodding. Yes, Maria, please, sit. She hesitated, unsure whether to obey. It wasn't common for a maid to be invited to sit in the master's study. After a moment of hesitation, she perched lightly on the edge of the chair opposite him, her eyes darting to the floor. Richard leaned back, folding his hands together. I came home early today, he began slowly, watching her reaction. I heard voices upstairs. I thought perhaps Ethan was watching something on television, but it wasn't that. Maria's face paled slightly. Oh, she murmured, lowering her head even more. Sir, I can explain. There's no need, he interrupted, his tone even. I stood outside the door for some time. Her breath caught, and she immediately began to apologize. I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to overstep. Ethan asked about the books I had, and I just, well, he seemed so interested. I thought it wouldn't hurt to show him a few things. I didn't think you'd mind, but Maria, he said gently, stopping her mid-sentence. I'm not angry. Her eyes flickered up in surprise. You're not. He shook his head. No. In fact, I'm astonished. My son was speaking 5 different languages this afternoon, fluently enough for his age. And he was happy, genuinely happy. I've never seen him so engaged. Maria blinked rapidly, her voice softening. Ethan is very bright, sir. He just needed someone to make learning feel like play. Once he realized it wasn't about rules or tests, he began to love it. Richard exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight he hadn't known he carried. All those expensive tutors I hired could never reach him like that. They saw a student. You saw a child. Maria looked down again, tears glimmering in her eyes. I just wanted to help. My mother was a teacher, sir. She used to say that the greatest joy in life is seeing someone understand something new. I guess I wanted to keep her words alive. There was a long pause. The air between them was quiet but heavy with meaning. Richard studied her carefully, The modest uniform, the calloused hands, the quiet strength in her posture. For the first time, he didn't see a servant. He saw a woman of substance, someone with a mind and heart capable of shaping the future of his only child. He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me something, Maria. How many languages do you speak?" She hesitated before answering. "5, sir. I learned English, French, Spanish, Mandarin, and Arabic. My mother taught me most of them, and I practiced through books and online lessons after she passed away." Richard's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Impressive. Why didn't you tell anyone?" Her lips curved into a faint, bittersweet smile. "Because it didn't seem to matter. Here, I'm the maid. I clean, cook, and keep things in order. That's my job." He shook his head slowly. "Not anymore." She looked up sharply. "Sir, I want you to continue teaching Ethan," he said, his voice firm but warm. "Not as a maid, but as his personal language tutor. You'll have more time for lessons, and I'll increase your salary accordingly." For a long moment, Maria just stared at him, stunned. "Sir, I don't know what to say." He allowed a small smile to break through his usually stoic expression. "Say it in all 5 languages." She laughed softly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Thank you, merci, gracias, shukran, zayaksi." The sincerity in her voice made him smile wider than he had in years. "That's perfect," he said quietly. "You've not only taught my son, you've taught me something too." Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the hallway. Ethan burst into the study, his small face flushed with excitement. "Dad, Maria said I can teach you a word," he exclaimed, holding one of her books open in his hands. Richard raised an eyebrow, playing along. "Oh, and what word is that?" Ethan grinned. "Familia. It means family in Spanish." Richard chuckled, his heart swelling unexpectedly. "Ah, yes, family." He glanced at Maria, who smiled shyly back. "That's a good one, son." Ethan proudly turned to her. "Maria, can we do more lessons tomorrow?" She nodded gently. "Of course, Ethan, but you'll have to promise me you'll do your homework first." He saluted her dramatically. "Yes, ma'am." Richard couldn't help but laugh. The room, once so formal and cold, now felt alive, filled with the warmth of laughter and purpose. He realized, in that moment, how long it had been since he'd seen his son so joyful, or since his house had felt like a home. When Ethan left the room, still babbling in Spanish, Richard turned back to Maria. "Thank you, truly," he said, his voice low but full of sincerity. "You've given my son something I couldn't wonder." Maria shook her head humbly. "No, sir, you gave him that. You gave him the chance to learn." He smiled faintly, standing to open the door for her. "We'll start fresh tomorrow, Miss Maria, the tutor." She blushed slightly at the title, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Alden. I won't disappoint you." As she left the room, Richard stood by the doorway for a long time, listening to the distant sound of his son's laughter echoing through the grand halls. For the first time, he didn't feel the emptiness that had haunted the mansion for years. Instead, it was filled with something far more valuable than wealth: hope, humility, and the quiet power of knowledge shared with love.